be held accountable. That's the quote. If you were president, would military action be on the table?
Well, if I was president, I wouldn't have taken my eye off of the #1 issue in the Middle East, which is Iran obtaining nuclear weapons. The problem with the Obama administration is that they put significant daylight between Israel and the United States from day one of the Obama presidency. So the president, unfortunately, sent signals of weakness and focused on Israel building apartments on their own land as opposed to Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon. That's been the problem. And when you have a nation that's a hostile nation seeing the United States from a lens point of weakness, then that can lead to actions that are absolutely heinous like we're seeing
at this point. Second of all, we have to make sure that people know that this is a time for American leadership. And we need to ratchet down those sanctions, those economic sanctions, very, very aggressively. We ought to be targeting the Iran Central Bank. We ought to be targeting the elites. We ought to be targeting the mullahs and the political leadership there. And we ought to be doing as much of this unilaterally as we can, because it's going to take a whole lot of time and effort to get the Russians, the Chinese, and others engaged. We ought to be comparing notes, and we ought to be interacting and sharing information with many of them, particularly those in the Gulf Cooperative Council region. But we ought to be prepared to deal with this one on our own in terms of the economic leverage that we can deploy.
Thanks.
All right, well, one missed opportunity might have been, at least at the beginning, was June of '09 with the election, when we sort of, as the protesters hit the street, when the United States sort of held back. That might have been a missed opportunity. But you say nonviolent means, and what the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said is that we're going to, up the sanctions, and we're going to probably get our allies to up the sanctions. Are you suggesting that sanctions is the way to go? It's a nonviolent means. Will that provoke the regime replacement?
Look, sanctions is a tiny step in the right direction. We should be actively funding every dissident group in Iran. We should be actively providing them with communications mechanisms. All you have to do is go back to the Reagan years. As you know, Clifton and I did a movie called 9 Days That Changed the World about Pope John Paul II's impact in Poland on undermining the whole Soviet Empire. We did a movie on Reagan called Rendezvous with Destiny that shows what he did. You look at what Reagan, Thatcher, and Pope John Paul II were doing. They were bringing pressure to bear from every angle. Psychological pressure, information pressure, economic pressure, helping dissidents organize, providing them resources, developing, for example, a radio-free Iran, a television-free Iran, an internet-free Iran. There are lots of things we could do to destabilize and ultimately replace this dictatorship. And it's a mistake for us to try to find a way to deal with them as Obama has, because they're in the end not going to be reconcilable. They are our mortal enemies.
The top of the Iranian government. What would you do, sir?
I would have done something earlier such that it probably would have encouraged them not to do something like this, Greta, and that is, one of the great capabilities that we have is our ballistic missile defense system that could be upgraded, and we could place these Aegis ballistic missile defense systems in international water in that part of the world. The only thing that Iran understands is our military capability, but unfortunately, they believe that they could do something like they did today, and that this nation is not going to react, because they see this president as a weak president. They would not see me as a weak president, and I would send some strong signals to let them know that we would be prepared to take whatever actions we needed to take.
All right, under your